Welcome to another Northern Monkeys datasheet review. This time we're looking at the Space Marine Captain. So the Space Marine Captain has been a mainstay of armies for all through the editions, and now as we come into 10th edition, I still think he has a really strong role. He can become an absolute melee powerhouse, with some builds being able to have him with 10 strength, 10 attacks with full hit and wound rerolls. Really impressive stuff. So let's talk about that as we dive into this guy's detachments, units he can lead, and tactics to get the most out of this unit. So looking at this guy, 80 points, you get a fairly decent spread of stats here. He has a 5th wound, which is quite important for just getting you out of those break points where 2 damage, 2 attacks will kill him, which is quite nice. With his 4-up invuln save and a few different enhancements you can take that increases durability, he actually can be relatively tough. However, where he really shines is in his damage. He has an absolute ton of ranged weapon options, which we'll discuss later, but generally they're all fairly decent, and in combat he has some great profiles with his power sword and his power fist. First ability, and one of his best, is Rites of Battle. This essentially lets you reduce the command point cost of a stratagem that you use for this guy's unit. Really strong ability. Now notable, it is only one unit with this ability, so if you have multiple captains they aren't all spamming this. But this can be really good. There's a load of stratagems in Marines that give you good offense, and at the end of the day there's always things like Armor of Contempt that you might want to use on this guy's squad. And just getting that extra value out of this guy, being able to conserve your command points just for later on in the battle, can be a really strong boost, and really lets you use this guy without expending too many of your long-term resources. And his second ability, and probably one of the more fun ones, Finest Hour. This is a sort of ability that this guy and his spiky cousin, the Chaos Lord, they all have something similar to this, where once per battle you get to boost your combat prowess significantly. And this is really good for the captain. What he gets is an extra 3 attacks, taking him up to 8 attacks with that power fist, which is really quite scary. But also he gets devastating wounds, so a chance to just completely ignore your opponent's saves. Really helpful for him. And if you can find ways to get those rerolls on this guy's attacks, you can even fish for dev wounds, which is a really strong ability. But this more to me cements the Space Marine Captain as a kind of missile unit that you send out to destroy something on your opponent's army that's maybe a bit more expensive than his unit is. And even if your unit dies, you're not too sad about it. Circling back round to this guy's war gear, I don't think there's really a place you can go wrong. You know, the bolt pistol obviously just is worse than everything else. That's just kind of the way that GW have made war gear this edition. There's not too much balance between it. But the rest of his stuff is all fairly good. You know, you've got this Neo Volkite and the plasma pistol. They can have a surprisingly decent burst of damage out of there. The Neo Volkite with its dev wounds and 2 damage is kind of nice. The plasma pistol has high strength and AP. And don't forget, you can always reroll those hazardous tests with this guy's free command point. So there's a little bit of safety for him there. I do really like the Mastercrafted bolt gun. Just give you those chip shots at range as well. It's only strength 4, so it's not going to tear up a squad of enemies, but it will just let him add a bit of damage. And if he occasionally blasts a 20-point Marine off the battlefield, you're not going to complain. However, melee is where this guy really shines. I think the Power Fist is obviously the best here. Sure, the sword gets an extra attack, but they both hit on 2s, and the Power Fist being strength 8, it's basically just going to be wounding any kind of other Marine body on a 2, which is really strong. And on top of that, it even wounds stuff like Terminators and all these sort of T6 and T7 stuff we've started seeing in the meta on 3s. So overall, I'd say, even though you get less attacks, the Power Fist is super worth it. And those attacks from Finest Hour become more valuable, because even though it's 8 attacks versus 9 attacks, that higher strength, it really shines through. One thing about the sword is it lets you take the Relic Shield as a piece of war gear, so you give up one of the better guns and you get an extra wound, which might seem like a good trade-off, maybe make it worth it. But the reason I don't love this is because you only go from 5 wounds to 6 wounds. The most common damage types that kill characters like this are damage 2 and damage 3, and those need the exact same amount to get through against this guy, regardless of whether you've got 5 or 6 wounds. So yeah, I don't really think the Relic Shield's worth it, but it is a cool looking model. Now the Captain's a bit of a weird one in 10th. I remember a long time ago, Art of War, I believe, made a video where they ran 3 Space Marine Captains all leading assault intercessors and impulsors, and were like, Yeah, with Finest Hour, this guy's just like the best Space Marine melee unit at the moment, and we're just using it to get like a real punch out of their Space Marine force. Which, I mean, to me, it kind of sucks because I do like to have like a sort of the armies to look good on the battlefield and feel right. So you're running 3 captains who all just immediately sacrifice themselves is a bit stupid. But I do think it is a valid tactic, and they are like, it's the strongest way to use this character. I like to have one of them. I think you've got enough other stuff going on in Marines at the moment that just like one captain with a unit that you kind of use as a missile, but maybe more as a reserve piece that knocks out enemies that try and break into your lines. That's where I find them really, really strong. The free stratagems, it's a great ability. There's a reason that like things like this have had to be nerfed and changed through the editions, because it is really, really strong. And it just lets you kind of eke value out of this unit without investing any resources and sort of keeping yourself, like perhaps after your opponent's made their big push, you get to like counter hit and knock a lot of them out, but still maintain like a strong command point lead for future turns. And Marines do have a lot of command points, you know, they want that 2 CP fight on death, they want all the different bonuses when they charge in or shoot, they want Armour of Contempt. So overall, keeping that like command point economy going, really, really good. So when it comes to characters, choosing a detachment just based on your character really probably isn't the best way to go, because these tend to be more buffing units, and they're the mainstay of your army really. As much as characters are like everywhere in this edition, you still kind of want to focus more on the bulk of your army than anything else. So what are you trying to get out of this? You want enhancements generally. Those are the things that only characters can have, and those are the way you're really going to be able to leverage a lot of power out of detachments. One detachment I do think makes really good use of the captain is the Firestorm Assault Force. There's a few little synergies here. The War-Tempered Artifice is a bit expensive at 25 points, but you get to add 3 to the strength characteristics of the bearer's melee weapon. Bringing that Power Fist up to strength 11, really, really nice. You know, you'll be wounding things like Dreadnoughts and other sort of tanks like Predators on 3s. Really, really strong. And then you add Crucible of Battle in there, which gives you +1 to wound if your enemy's within 6 of you, which obviously you will be in melee. It means you're wounding vehicles on 2s. It can just be a really good way of having this guy kind of crack open enemy vehicles and even knights that are trying to rush you down. And on top of that, the detachment has a very, very expensive 2 CP stratagem that lets you get dev wounds on your torrent weapons. I think being able to make that 1 CP makes it a lot more palatable, especially because it's a detachment that runs a lot of flamers. You're also going to be wanting to overwatch a lot. I just think the captain's command point reduction can be really, really valuable here, on top of being able to be a like anti-vehicle melee threat. Now as ever, let's talk about Gladius Task Force, because it's head and shoulders the best. There's a lot of things that kind of compound each other in Gladius that just make the captains really, really efficient in this detachment. First off, you've got the Assault Doctrine. This lets you declare a charge in a turn in which you've advanced for your army. The captain really likes this. Him and his little squad can kind of zoom out there. Again, that kind of missile roll, and really just like smash through enemies that are usually outside of a 6-inch threat range. On top of that, there's the Honor Vermin. This is +1 attacks, +1 strength, only 15 points. It takes the captain up there, gets him up to 6 attacks with that fist. But then, if you're in the Assault Doctrine, it takes you up 2 strength and 2 attacks, which, you know, you can see how this starts to work. Like, he wants to be in the Assault Doctrine anyway, the Honor Vermin benefits from that. It can just make the captain a really, really scary threat with that. Then, you might not want to put your whole army into that Assault Doctrine. You might just want to be using this captain's unit to kind of fend off an enemy push onto an objective. Well, that's where Adaptive Strategy comes in. This lets you pick one of your units, put them in that doctrine. Now this is great on the captain, because when you go to use this, he can just make it free. So you're always getting value out of his rights of battle. Really, really strong, and lets him, again, it acts as like a solo missile piece. And on top of that, you then have great stratagem support outside of this doctrine changing thing. First off, you get the ability to give yourself Lance and +1 AP. If you're not wanting to use Oath of Moment on whatever he's going into, the Lance strat can be really, really strong. Again, he gets all the way up to like strength 10 with this combo, so getting +1 to wound on top of that means he's going to be wounding even like the toughest vehicles on 4s, a lot of them on 3s. So yeah, really, really strong. And you get that extra pip of armor penetration as well. So that means that you can put this guy's unit into the doctrine, advance, charge, and then get +1 to wound, +1 AP, and it's only cost you 1 command point's worth of resources. Really, really strong. And then on top of that, if he goes in, destroys an enemy unit, and then is camped out on an objective, and your opponent tries to like bring a big melee unit in to wipe him out, he's not that tough, so it probably will happen, but you can just pay 2 CP, again maybe reduced by 1, depending on how the turns have worked out. Like if you were going second and then it moves into the next turn, which is when your opponent attacks you, you can do this stratagem for 1 CP, and you get to fight on death. Again, it makes that captain super efficient, and just lets you really like trade up in a lot of different matchups. But your captain's not going to do all this on his own. He needs a squad to lead to get that value and maybe even boost him up, which is where the Assault Intercessors come in. 75 points for 5, so these guys are only 170 points with the captain included. Great abilities. They give him full wound rerolls if you're fighting an enemy on an objective, or just reroll ones normally. This can help make the captain super consistent. Like I said, he's going to be wounding a lot of things on 3s, hitting on 2s, getting all these rerolls in there from like Oath of Moment, from these guys, can just be really strong. These guys also do fulfill that role of being like a pure melee missile unit. You know, they're cheap, expendable, they have a lot of attacks to clear chaff, and even have a power fist from the sergeant that can chip in. And they all do also really like those buffs, you know, those stratagems that you're putting on the captain to give them +1 to wound and stuff. It really buffs up the Assault Intercessors, especially Oath of Moment, really good. Now, it's worth mentioning that one of the great things about these guys is the Finest Hour synergy. You can use the reroll wounds that this squad gives you to try and fish for those dev wounds, take out enemies that have a good invuln. It's really strong. And in addition, this squad has enough volume to kind of clear out chaff and then let your captain like finish off an enemy leader that you want to. So yeah, absolutely great. This is the unit for the captain if you're wanting to use them purely in that missile role. It's so efficient. And my personal favourite, Sternguard Veterans. These guys are great with a captain in them. You can only pay 100 points for 5 of them. Bit more expensive, but you do kind of just get more value out of it. The captain in there, you can still get, if you're going into the Oath target, you still get those rerolls to wound. Really good. Like the captain has a fairly decent gun, he has great melee. So him and the Sternguard will hit harder than the Assault Intercessors in my opinion. They just have so many attacks that it just kind of works out well for them. And even though you're not hitting things on objectives, you're hitting the Oath target, it's sort of, you have more control over that. Your opponent can decide not to be on the objective, whereas you always get to pick who you're oathing. Another cool thing about this is there's other stratagems that can buff shooting, and the captain can make those free, so the Sternguard can all of a sudden make their guns all AP2, ignores cover, and the captain just does that for free. It lets you maybe like sort of move around a corner, obliterate an enemy unit with shooting, and then leave the objective open, and you don't necessarily have to trade a piece, but you can still wipe out a unit of like guardsmen, termagants, that kind of thing. So yeah, really like Sternguard with the captain. It's just a fun like thematic combo as well, but there is more efficiency in those Assault Intercessors for sure. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Try and do weekly content like this. I really love the Space Marine Captain. It's like, ever since I got that like little multi-part plastic kit you used to be able to get with like the Eagle backpack, I always thought amazing like kind of unit. Really like just the most Space Marine in a lot of ways. And yeah, he's been a sort of mainstay of Space Marines for years. So it's good to see him represented. The captain is often like the centre of a whatever novel or game that they're making at the time. So it's really cool that this guy has such a strong presence on the tabletop as well.